We are on page 44 or 45. Since we took a long hiatus, I would like to go over very briefly about what we covered last 2-3 times. Because this is the basis of Kabbalah or Hasidic teaching that will be played out on many chapters as will come up. And in addition, other areas of Jewish mysticism, Hasidic teaching. The Rabbi has shared with us that there are 5 levels within the human being. 2 within wicked, a complete wicked and is good, an incomplete wicked, 2 within a righteous, a complete righteous, incomplete righteous, and then we have the Benoni, the one who is in the middle. The Rabbi had proved that it's impossible that the idea of a Benoni is someone whose deeds are half and half. It's not going to work, says the Rabbi. Number one, the Torah tells us that as soon as someone sins, they cut themselves off of God. And that is the definition of wicked in Judaism. Righteousness is not holy, someone who studies Torah and pray all day. Righteous is someone who is connected to God. There is a spiritual hose, a pipe, that brings energy to God, from God to the human. When I'm righteous, if I'm righteous, we're all righteous now because we study God's words. And therefore we connect. Anytime I help someone, I am a righteous man. Wicked is not evil person, someone who cheats on his spouse, or someone who is stealing, or someone who has evil thoughts. A wicked person is defined in Judaism as someone who is not now connected with God. And therefore, says the Rabbi, by default, there is only 2 possibilities. Either you're connected to God or you're disconnected. According to the Torah, the Talmud, and the Rabbi brings the Talmud, because the Rabbi, when he codified this book, the Tanya, there were many scholars who were testing to see if the Hasidic teaching is based on Jewish tradition. So everything is based on the Talmud. The Talmud tells us that when someone commits a single sin, he is a complete wicked man. The Talmud goes on to say, the Rebbe goes on, even a rabbinic enactment, man, the punishment is not as severe as Torah enactment. In other words, when someone disobeys an enactment by the rabbis, he's not going to be punished as severe as someone who disobeys Torah enactment, but in the level of this connection with God, it's the same. So perhaps it's someone who wants to do or has the ability to do good and he's not, he's wasting time. Says the Rebbe, that's also impossible. The Torah tells us that if someone has the ability to do a mitzvah and he refrains, he's cutting himself off of God. If I have an opportunity to study Torah and I don't, I'm separated from God. If I have an opportunity, someone asks me, or without asking, I have an opportunity to perform a mitzvah, and at the moment I don't have a good reason not to, I'm totally separated from God. If so, as the Rabbi, just by not doing good, we are separated from God. So there is no Benoni. We are considered wicked. And in addition, the Rabbi says, even if someone else has committed a sin, he's disobeying God. And I have watched and did not rebuke or did not protest, at least, the sin. I share in the sin. The sin is on me, and we are separated ourselves from God. So therefore, it's impossible for a Benoni to be half and half, let alone a righteous man that has majority of good deeds. It's impossible. There is no such thing. It's either you're pregnant or you're not pregnant. There is no such thing as half and half. There is no such thing as 3/4. Says the Rabbi, this is what we studied until now. Let me just, it's a summary, but I need to, so to say, to drill it so that you have a good understanding. So we can, I would rather go slow and have you understand very well, because it will have many implications and many other aspects. As I've shared about life, about people with different habits, etc., they can take many notes from what we study. What the Rabbi is saying is that there are 2 ways of looking at a description of a human being. One is the true definition, and the other is called in Hebrew a borrowed term. If I say to you that the man has a heart of stone, his heart is as same flesh and moving like mine, but we are describing something that is easy for us to understand by using a borrowed term from a rock. The rock has no sensitivity. The rock has no feeling. And a person who has no sensitivity to a person, a fellow human being, we say he has a rock, a heart of stone. It's not that it turned into a stone. It's a borrowed term. If I tell you that my father is bigger than you, father, it's not about the height, assuming we're not talking about the height. It's about great behavior, greatness in learning, etc. So that's called a borrowed term. Says the rabbi, you have one category of understanding about righteous and wicked, and that's a borrowed term. Borrowed term is necessary, says the rabbi, because when someone is judged in the court up in heaven, every person is responsible for every single deed, evil or good. They will pay or be rewarded. However, if someone's majority of deeds are good, he is judged favorably. It's like a great leniency is applied for the evil doing because majority of his deeds, that's what we're looking at. If someone's majority of deeds are negative, then the punishment apply is much greater. We go, as we say, we throw the book at the guy. We go to the extent of the law. And that's the definition of righteous or wicked. When someone's majority of deeds are good, we call him righteous, because when you stand before God in heavenly court, and everyone will pay for every single deed, yet if he's righteous, meaning majority of his deeds, more than half, is in the positive, they will give him leniency. They will find ways to cut deals with them and give him shortcuts. When someone is wicked, the term wicked is borrowed here. Majority of his deeds are wicked. We call him the wicked. What does it matter? Because then we look at every single deed and we find the best way to cause the punishment to go out in the most extreme way. A Benoni is someone who's 50-50. He's exactly in the middle. And that's when we tell the person, we will be a little kind to you, but not too kind. That's called borrowed term. Did you understand that? However, we need to go back to the true description of righteous, wicked, and middle. Righteous man, the true definition of righteous is someone who possesses not a single misdeed, not one single of sin, or even watching someone sin and not protesting. A wicked person is someone who is not engaged in connecting to God, may not be even involved in committing a sin. He's just not utilizing his ability, his talent, his time to connect to God. The Benoni must be someone who is not wicked, meaning in his deeds, he's all perfect. The Benoni is very similar to a tzaddik. The difference between a righteous and Benoni is in their fight internally. A righteous man, and I'll soon get into details, so hold your questions if you have. A righteous man will not even have a challenge to utilize his time to do good. He realizes he has a certain amount of days, years, time, and he better use the time every single moment to the best of his ability. A Benoni wants to do it, but he has inner forces who are fighting it, and therefore everything comes with a great battle. Everything is he will win the battle, but it's a very challenging battle. Now, based on that, in the borrowed term, a righteous man that is good, that the perfect righteous, there is imperfect righteous, there is a perfect righteous. A perfect righteous, based on our discussion, is someone who may not have clean slate. He may not have all good deeds. He may have few deeds that are not good. So he may be a perfect righteous in the borrowed term is below a Benoni in the true definition. Did I make myself clear?
No.
Let me explain. Did you understand?
I believe so.
All right. In the borrowed terminology, righteous is not someone who did all good. Righteous man is someone who has a little few sins, but majority of his deeds are good deeds. Therefore, we call him righteous. That's in the borrowed term, right? So this man, in the borrowed term, a righteous man, is perfect? The answer is no, right? He has few sins. Now we go back to the true meaning of the word Benoni. I just told you that if someone has a single sin, he is considered wicked. And therefore, a Benoni is someone who do not possess not a single sin. So in the true definition, the Benoni, the term Benoni is far greater than a righteous in the borrowed terminology. Because in the borrowed terminology, a righteous man may possess some sins. Did you understand that, or I should repeat it again? I want to make sure you understand. Ali, you understand? Linda?
I have just a question clarifying. So is a Benoni, is he connected to God? Is he fully connected?
Must be. Because as soon as he is disconnected, he is a wicked. You see, you need to understand that Tanya wants to give us a rethinking. The idea of righteous or evil. Evil is not someone who should hate, or is someone dangerous to society, or is a serial killer, etc. It may be a very holy man with long white beard. But the fact that he does not utilize his time properly, we call him wicked. It's not an evil. There is no such thing as evil or bad or darkness or devil. That's where people say there is no devil in Judaism. I'm sure you heard it. I come across it all the time. Because the idea of evil in Judaism is just not being connected with God. Punishment in Judaism is an option to reconnect with God. God says you need to clean what you have done. You don't have to if you don't want to. But if you go into a wedding and you have a stain on your jacket or dress, you'll be ashamed. You have an opportunity to put your dress in the dry cleaning. As we'll discover, the garments of the soul accumulate stains, and they have the ability. So it's not by force. Also, it's only temporary. There is no such thing as someone permanent in hell. God is not an avenger. God is not looking to get back at us. This is not, it doesn't work like that way. Back to our discussion. Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You either are connected to God or not connected to God.
Exactly.
So where's the Benoni?
Right. A
A
Benoni must be connected to God. That's exactly what she asked. A Benoni must be connected to God. That's why he's doing the right thing. That's why Rabbi said, I am an example of a Benoni.
And he's higher than a righteous man.
He's higher than the righteous in the borrowed term.
And the borrowed.
Very true. Now, the difference between a righteous and a Benoni is in their reaching that goal. For a righteous, it's a very smooth sailing. It's very easy. For a Benoni, it's a fight. It's constantly a fight. As we'll discover so much into it. Do we need an air conditioner?
I got one right here.
So the righteous is like connected to the hard wire, and the Benoni is like Wi-Fi, or right?
Again. I'm not sure that I understand what you're saying. Can you repeat again?
So the righteous person is connected to the hard wire, like, let's say internet, right? You have a wire connected.
All right.
But the Benoni is like through the Wi-Fi.
What makes the Wi-Fi difficult, more difficult?
There could be interruptions. You go a little bit further away, and then the connection is lost. You know.
If that's the way you see it.
Rabbi, Benoni is connected to God. You can't be called Benoni.
Can you believe it? I just from here. It's a new AC we got, so I can do it from here without getting up. And as soon as you complain, as soon as you too cold,
We'll let you know.
we'll change it.
Huh?
Okay.
He's a direct line.
Yeah.
I hope it will.
He has the hard Wi-Fi. We have Wi-Fi.
All I'm gonna say is, I am sure that you, and I don't mean to brag about myself, but it's the idea that comes to mind. My Hebrew reading is different than anyone who gained that reading at a later stage in their life as an adult, right? So it's just like my English, and I'm putting in already 32 years since I moved here to read English, and I'm sure it's not as good as majority or the average person here. Why? Because something that wasn't an inborn. It's something that was added after we reach adulthood, which learning languages, unless you live in Europe they say they have a better talent, better ability to connect to languages. So Benoni and Tzaddik in their behavior, and I need to make it clear, you won't see any difference. They will utilize every moment, they're always connected to God. The problem is that the distinction is, a righteous man, it comes to him naturally. A Benoni, it comes through a great fight, constantly fighting and arguing and fighting. And you can think, okay, it's over, the fight is over, I won, but tomorrow it will be a new fight. And the day after will be a fight again. It will never stop.
So Benonim and Tzaddik are close connected?
Benoni and Tzaddik are very close. Somebody asked that last time, I think it was Herman, where is the Benoni is connected to the wicked or to the Tzaddik? For sure to the Tzaddik, because in their behavior, in their action, they are exactly like a Tzaddik. You won't tell the difference. However, internally, they have the same fight and challenges as a wicked man. Did I myself?
You say the fight it's a horror to overcome what?
Overcome any challenge that's not Jewish, that's against Torah. I'm making it as simple as possible. Is that clear so far? So, how many messages that gives us? So first, you have, let's talk about a righteous in the true term meaning of a righteous. You have a complete righteous and an incomplete righteous. What's the difference between them? A complete righteous does not even want to eat not kosher. If you place a non-kosher food before them, they will throw up. It's like something that you want to run away from. Anytime somebody talk lashon hara, anytime somebody wants to violate a holiday or Shabbat, they can't stand it. They run away. It hurts them physically. That's a complete righteous. An incomplete righteous man wants the same thing, does for sure the same thing, wants the same thing. However, it's not as exciting, or he's not running away from sin as much as a complete righteous. There are two ideas here. The evil desire is not completely dead. It's subdued, and therefore it does not motivate him or fight for it, but it still exists. Did I make myself clear? A Benoni is a whole different ballgame. A Benoni has two souls, two desires, righteous and wicked, and they constantly fight. As well, by the way, everything we talk about will develop into many details. And the end of the day, the righteous side always wins. Either because he gets supported by family and friends, or because he convinces himself that's the right thing to do for whatever reason. King David, everything I show it you already studied. King David said that he killed his evil. I didn't have time last time because I was rushing. King David says that his heart is empty on the left side. Why? Because he killed his evil soul. The desire to do evil, how did he kill it? Anybody remembers? Fasting. That's not the only way to kill the evil, but that's the way David chose. He was fasting and fasting and fasting until he weakened and took away the oxygen from the evil desire, and the evil desire is totally gone. The Rabbi points out that that's one level within a righteous. There is another level within a righteous, converting the evil to become positive. To be a positive forces. We will discover and discuss it at great length. But right now, the Tanya chose, the Alter Rebbe chose not to talk about that. So not to confuse, but I do think it's interesting to know. But let's go back to King David. King David killed, he said, his left side of his heart is empty because he killed the evil soul. How did he do it? Through fasting. One can do it through studying, through contemplating. There's all kinds of ways. It's very, very hard, but it's possible. There is a remote chance. A Benoni, as we'll discover, is the reason we all are here. Because God wants us to do the right thing, not to have no desire for evil. And I said to you, there are many, many addictions. When people say, I was born this way, or I can't hold myself back. And this is the Tanya. This is the book of Tanya that's addressing that very core of idea. And that is, we all have evil desires. We all have quirks. We all have misbehaving desires. Some of us have it stronger, some are not. The idea from Judaism, and that's what the Tanya is, just make sure you understand this is completely perfect. There is nothing wrong with the desires that you might have. You need to work on your action. So someone who is addicted to drinking, for example, I'm using as an example, I hope I'm not offending anybody, and they really have strong desire to drink, it doesn't mean that there is something wrong with them. It doesn't mean that they could have had a better life. That's not true. In fact, the vast majority of humanity has certain desires which are inappropriate. The goal is to be like everybody else and to fight that urge. Some people have it with drinking, some people have it with lying, some people have it with being late, some people have it with no respect to the spouse or children. Everybody has their own issues, but realizing some are stronger with those evil desires, some are weaker. The goal is for us to stay steadfast in our behavior. And the behavior is where we're looking at. Everything else might be that God has placed us those challenges for the purpose of overcoming. Just like in the race, you put the so to say stumbling blocks or sticks to prove that the horse can jump over, and the greater the horse, the higher the stumbling challenges are. So that's the same within human, but we're going to go into the Benoni. This is called the book of Benoni. This is going to be the topic of our discussion. This is what we have discovered so far. So again, a righteous man, and therefore, says the Rabbi, that's the only way to explain why God saw that there are very few righteous, because it's impossible. It's literally, virtually impossible to reach. And therefore, he planted them very few in each generation. Remember we discussed that? If a righteous man is someone who's doing 80-20, then you have plenty. I'm sure in this room we have at least majority of the people who are doing at least 80% good. The reason when God, in other words, the Alter Rebbe proves it from the Talmud. Otherwise, you can't explain the Talmud. The only way to explain that statement that God saw there are very few righteous men, therefore he spread them all around. It must be a true definition of a righteous, someone who is connected to God. And that is very difficult to achieve. And therefore, God planted them in every generation to serve as guide, as role models, to be able to influence and infuse the generation with connecting to God. This is so far what we've studied. Now we're going a little bit further. The Rabbi, until now, we talked about the two desires. There is a desire for good, and there is desire for evil. Yetzer is desire, as we read now in the creation of the universe. God says the desire of man is for evil, therefore I kick him out from heaven. Those of us who have been to the Shabbat study, we studied about that. The desires, you have two, you have good and you have evil desire. The Rabbi is going to get a little bit farther based on Kabbalah, that there are actually two souls. Usually the souls are connected with the desire, but not necessarily so. It's not always like that. And there are two separate entities. I need you to understand when we say Yetzer Tov or Yetzer Ra, evil desire or evil or good desire, you have, it's not necessarily exactly nefesh elokit or nefesh be'amit, godly soul or animal soul. It's separate things, and that's what the rabbi is going to go into. The rabbi is going to teach us, by the way, this was the greatest revelation. The rabbi said that there are two souls who are pulling in different direction. Freud, he talked about the duality, the dichotomy that exists. Until Freud, in the modern psychology, they couldn't comprehend the idea that the same man in the morning is a perfect human being and at night is an evil person, because that means that there's something wrong with him, because he's conflicting himself from one day to the other. But Freud came and said there are two personalities within each. Sometimes we are operating from the good personality, sometimes we operate from the evil personality. Freud was not the one I learned it from. I never learned Freud. I just discovered, I heard that Freud is talking about that. But I studied it in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe will find out. He's talking about two souls. They are fighting for control over the body. And sometimes the godly soul will rule, sometimes the evil soul will rule. As we will discover, a Benoni is the epitome of that fight. Righteous men don't have that fight. They don't have it. The godly soul mouth is shut. They have a muzzle on their mouth. They cannot say nothing. They're just sitting there, tied to a bed. The wicked person, a wicked person, is someone who most of the time give in to the evil soul. The Benoni, it's equal, and therefore the fight is fierce, and there is constant fight. Who is going to rule? And the goal is the rabbi is trying to guide or aid the person to allow for the godly soul to rule all the time and not allow the animal soul. Is he going to get rid of the animal soul? Not necessarily. Is he going to stop having the desire to do sin? Not necessarily. However, he needs to understand that that's not the goal in life. My goal in life is not to be desiring not to steal or not to drink or not to lie. My goal in life is not to drink and not to steal and not to say lies. Even if that's the urges that I face and I want to do it, it is perfectly normal. It is part of the human being. But if you refrain from doing so, God will reward you for the challenge, and the greater the challenge, the greater the reward. I hope I made myself clear.
Question, so a perfect tzaddik, is he born into a tzaddik family or like?
Actually, the rabbi is going to address that the most righteous men were born to the simplest human beings. Abraham, the first Jew, his father and mother had been idol worshippers, and they were to an extreme low life personality. Because it's been recorded, I don't want to describe how the Midrash describes Abraham's father and mother, but the most low life behavior, ethical behavior you can think of. And only then Abraham can be born. Also, we see that within the Jewish people, the greatest leaders came from converts. First, King David, until today we say the book of Solomon. Majority of Jews are from the house of Judah, meaning his grandmother Ruth was a Moabite, someone who men are not allowed to convert. Anybody knows that the Moabite cannot be converting to Judaism? Only women, because of their very mean behavior. Rabbi Meir, Onkelos, Rabbi Akiva, these are people that kept the Jewish tradition going, had at best very simple parents, and definitely nothing to do with being righteous. So, and as the rabbi will talk about, there is something, a gift that the parents will give their children, but the holy souls of righteous men usually will be enclosed within parents who are very far from being righteous. Okay? And by the way, we're going to get to it at the end of the second chapter. Now the rabbi, page 44. Are we ready? However, I'm starting to read, however, the explanation of the matter. So that I'm reading in the middle of page 44. However, the explanation of the matter, so that we better understand the levels of a tzaddik and Benoni, as well as the various gradations within the ranks. I think I shared, and maybe I didn't put too much emphasis because it's not that important, but we need to know there are myriads of levels within tzaddik. There are myriads of levels within a wicked, and there are myriads of levels within a Benoni. Someone has very strong passion for evil, someone has not such a strong passion for evil. So when we say a Benoni, you see, if you talk about borrowed term, majority, you say it's a quantity matter. Someone has 80-20, someone has 70-30, they're called tzaddik. Why? Because it's more than 50%. When you talk about the connection with God, that connection can be done on many, many levels. A stronger connection, a weaker connection, and in between. A Benoni who is connected to God after a fight, the fight might be a very long one or maybe a very short one. So there are many, many levels. Is to be found, so it says the Rabbi, to go a little deeper and have a better understanding, is to be found in light of what Rabbi Chaim Vital wrote in Shar Akdusha and in Eitz Chaim, Portal 50, chapter 2. This is books of Kabbalah that explained about this. That every Jew, whether righteous or wicked, possesses two souls. Has nothing to do with my parents are, has nothing to do which yeshiva I go to, has nothing to do with reading Hebrew or being bar bat mitzvah, just by being born Jewish. We will talk about the non-Jewish souls in a moment later on in this chapter. Just the fact that we are born Jewish, we were given two souls. If someone converts, they receive those two souls. As it is written, and neshamot, souls, plural, which I've made. Though the verse speaks of an individual Jew, as is indicated by the singular form of the word ruach, not ruchot, spirit, in the preceding phrase, when the spirit of a man which emanates from me will be humbled, the plural term souls is nevertheless used, indicating that every Jew possesses two souls. God says that I have created souls and imbued them within the body. Souls is plural, minimum two. These are two nefashot. Nefesh is a word in Hebrew to the soul. Two souls and life forces. One soul, the Rabbi is going to concentrate a little bit about the first soul is the evil soul because it enters the body first. It enters at birth. The second soul enters much later at bar or bat mitzvah and completes its entrance at the age or at the moment of marriage. But before then or before bar mitzvah, it doesn't even enter the body. This one soul originates in the klipa and sitra acha. Klipa means a shell or peel. God created forces which conceal godly force found in all creation, as a peel covers and conceals a fruit. Sitra acha means the other side, the side of creation that is antithesis of holiness and purity. The two terms are generally synonymous. So we talked about it last time. Every fruit, in order for it to grow and be protected, it needs a peel. There are three types of peels. We talked about it last time, didn't we? One type of peel that can be consumed, edible, like tomato, apple, pear, peach. Then you have another type of peel, unedible, but can be converted into an edible peel and consumable, and that is orange peel. Orange peel, you can make jam, you can do all kinds of stuff, a lot of benefit, but you have to work with it. You can't just consume it like that. But then you have another peel that is harmful to the body. If someone consumes it, it will hurt, it will damage the internal body parts, organs. And that is an example of coconut, pineapple, nuts, walnuts. Thank you. Avocado, yes, maybe, unless someone can invent something to benefit from. But these are pills that when consumed, they will cause harm, no benefit, no nutrition. Says the Rabbi, that in this universe, God created a fruit and a peel. The peel's purpose is to protect the fruit. How do you protect the fruit? By separating the fruit from the rest of the elements, from the fly, insects, from the rain, from the wind, from the tsunamis, from the hurricanes. Without the peel, it would have no chance, stand no chance to exist. Is it something we interact with? No, because if we interact with it, we're going to get hurt. Our interaction is with the fruit itself, not with the peel, not with the outer layer that protects the fruit. Therefore, says the Rabbi, the first soul, we call it evil soul or animal soul. In the later on, we'll see the distinction between the two, but let's call it an evil soul. It's not evil like anti-Semite. It's not evil like a murderer. I need you to understand the idea of evil in Hasidic, as we'll discover other terminology. It's not evil in its core. It's just not part of godliness, and therefore we should have no part in interacting, just like you don't consume the walnut or the pineapple peel. And therefore, they are there to serve as a separation between us and the food, to conceal godliness, to make sure the universe looks like all natural. There is no God. So when we serve God, we face a challenge and are able to overcome challenge. So this is the first soul that entered my body. That soul will make me want to steal. That soul wants me to waste time and watch TV all day long and to binge. That soul wants me to yell at people. That soul wants me to have whatever is mine, nobody have part of it. That soul, it comes from those three shells. We call it three shells, but they all are exemplified by a pineapple peel or a walnut peel, and they are totally harmful, and therefore we have to stay away. There is no way of converting them. There is an exception to the rule, but we'll discover in 7th chapter. But there is no benefit to it, and therefore we need to stay away. But that's the first soul that enters the body. In other words, as we were born, all we know is me, how I feel, what I want, what makes me feel good. What you do, what makes you feel good have nothing to do with me. So if someone, the mother says to a child, please share because your brother also want to have a treat. You say, so what if he wants? It's mine. I want it. I want to eat it. All mine. This is from the animal soul that enters the body at birth. And therefore, we were entrusted, hopefully with good parents, to train us and raise us in the proper behavior. And the same is in the holy way. So you don't eat something that's not yours, and you don't eat something that's not kosher. And you make a blessing before you eat, and you eat enough that's for you, the health of your body, not just what makes you feel good. Says the Rabbi, it is this nefesh. Nefesh is another word for a soul, which originates in the klipa and sitra achra. Klipa is peel, comes from the peel, meaning you should have no interaction to it, that is clothed in the blood of a human being, giving life to the body. This is the source of our sustenance. It enters the body, the blood, and it is part of our blood. Can you live without blood? No, the answer is no. Can the blood stop from circulating? Every iota, the nail, the skin, everything has blood, must have blood. Meaning that the evil soul, the nefesh be'amit, the animal soul, is part and parcel of every single iota of my existence. Not just in my heart. The heart symbolizes that soul because that's where it starts from. But the blood is everywhere. Is the blood good? Of course it's good. It's necessary to survive. Is blood, are we allowed to consume blood? No, because it contains the soul. If you read when God forbade men to consume blood from animals, even kosher animals, God says because the soul is in the blood, and therefore you have nothing to do with it. Well, according to Kabbalah, it's the evil soul that's in the blood, and therefore we have to stay away from consumption or interaction.
Does an animal have a soul?
Of course.
No, I'm serious.
Yes, but that soul, this soul, and I'm so sorry for all of us who love pets, and I love pets, but they have only one soul. We call it the animal soul.
Not my puppies.
All right, can't argue with you.
The Rabbi, in the morning state of the kind of someone, there's nothing, it only speaks of one soul.
We talk about the godly soul, because the animal soul must stay in the body from day one, from the first moment he was born until the end of life. So when you say, God, you placed a soul, I thank you for the soul,
No matter the second one.
it's the godly soul that left the body when you go to sleep. That's why we must wash hands, because the impurity that enters the body. What's the impurity? The full control of the animal soul. You understand? It is as it is written, for the nefesh of the flesh, that is nefesh that sustains physical and corporal life, is in the blood. The nefesh is in the blood. That soul, the animal soul, is in the blood. Blood equals animal soul. It's not bad. We need to preserve it. We need to donate blood. We need to make sure that if someone is bleeding, to stop it so they have a good life, no doubt. However, the animal soul, it's not a symbol of the animal soul. It is inside in the blood. From this nefesh stems all the evil characteristics deriving from the 4 evil elements within it. We are going to talk a little bit about 4 elements. Modern science may disagree, but this is the way Judaism is based on. And by the way, not only Kabbalah, but also plain Judaism. It's in Rambam, in Maimonides, in his code of law, and in the book for the guide for the perplexed. Rambam writes it very beautifully and very simply. Rambam writes that the universe was created with 4, and by the way, I spoke about it on Shabbos. The universe was created by 4 elements: water, fire, air, earth. These are the 4 elements. Some call it matter, energy, liquid, and gases. Okay? These are 4 separate elements. According to the atom, today, everything is 1 element. But that's in the root, in the source. So I don't want to get into science because I'm not a scientist. When the way the Rambam it is not a Kabbalist. And the way the Kabbalah talks about is that those are 4 elements that animates, creates, and part of every existence. So when you look at a physical fire, it contains all 4 elements, except, let's say I'm using an arbitrary number, 97% is fire, a little bit water. How do I know there is water? When I was a child, they told me, if you look at a fire above it, you'll see liquidy. It looks like liquid that evaporates. That's the water part. What's the earth? The part that consumed. After that, there is ashes, right? Anything that's been consumed, there is ashes. A paper, a wood. That ash is the part of earth that cannot be totally gone. And the air is part of the flame that are moving around because there is air. So when I tell you there are 4 elements, it doesn't mean that water contains only 1 element. Water contains 4 elements. However, that's why the rocks that bring fire come from the oceans, I believe, deep in the ocean. All 4 elements are in every one of those 4. However, it all depends on the quantity. But aside from that, generally speaking, everything you see around must contain all 4 elements. Some of them, they can screen one of the elements or 2 of the elements. Some of them can share with you all 4. So when I look at the plastic is made out of earth. It came from the ground, and Simple. Water is one of the four elements. Fire is one. We possess all four, right? We have blood, water, we have the soul that keeps breathing, it's the air. Majority of our body is from earth, as we read this past week in the Torah. God created man from earth. That's why you're returning back to earth. And the fire is the flame, the energy that keeps pumping and keeps walking in the body. Says the Rabbi that those four elements belong in both ways, holiness or impurity. In other words, those four elements within my soul are responsible for certain traits or behavior. Some people are more earthly, some people are more spiritual, lofty, some people are more of a fire, they're always hot, they're always with a blend, they're always fiery. Some people are all like wind, they're fluffy, as we'll discover here. Here is the rabbi explaining nature or misbehavior that belongs to one of the four elements. So we are number page 45 on the bottom. From this nefesh stem all the evil characteristics deriving from the four evil elements within it. So all misbehaving, all evil characteristics are defined by one of the four elements, as we will, and as I said, in holiness, you have those four elements that are responsible for holy behavior. But now we're talking about evil characteristic that enters the body, the human, within the animal soul. Just as the four physical elements of fire, air, water, and earth are the foundation of all physical entities, so too is this nefesh comprised of four corresponding spiritual elements. Since they derive from klipa and evil, they themselves are evil, and from them in turn, one's evil characteristics come into being. And here is the rabbi. I'm going to read all four and then I'll go into details because I want to cover this entire topic. Namely, anger and pride emanate from the element of fire, which rises upward. When someone is angry, they feel they are above everybody. Pride is better. He possesses something that nobody else. So they are lifted. Internally, they feel that they are above everyone else. And that's fire that rises high. As he's explaining, once ignited by anger and pride, a man, like fire, soars aloft. Pride is the state of considering oneself superior to others. Anger, too, is an offshoot of pride. Why? Would a person not be proud? He would not be angered when someone defied his will. If I told someone to do something and he didn't, or someone promised me and he did not deliver, and I get angry, it means that I deserve, or I feel that he owes me. In other words, the pride of being above that person. If I'm humble, if I am equal to that person, I have to accept that some people think differently or do different things, and I should have full respect. So pride, the nature of pride, and the nature of anger are connected to the element of fire. So some people will get by nature, because they are connected more to fire. They're very proud of themselves. They boast about whatever it is that they want to, and they get very angry when someone, God forbid, crosses their path against their will. The appetite for pleasures, and by the way, the rabbi is using just examples of fire, the evil characteristic to fire. There are many others, but the nature of fire is to rise above in a negative way. And as I said, and I have to preface all the time, there is a positive way with fire and with all the other three elements as well. But we're talking about the negative characteristic. So the fire is defined by someone who is rising above everyone, and that causes the person either to be angry at others or to pride himself and show off, etc. The appetite for pleasures emanates from the element of water, for water promotes the growth of all kinds of pleasurable things. Nothing will happen without water, right? All the good food is the first pleasure that people taste or encounter with before they grow up and they learn to have more expensive toys. But when we're children, it's a lollipop, it's a good food, it's a tasty food. As we mature, it's all to do with water. The ability of water to make pleasurable things grow indicate that concealed within it is the element of pleasure. Thus, the appetite of pleasure derived from the element of water. Some people, their evil or their evil characteristic are connected to pleasure, that they like to enjoy life. Leave me alone. Come to study Torah. I would rather sit by the beach. I would rather watch a movie. They are, so to say, relaxed, mañana. They have a good time. They just enjoy life. Then they are harmless. We call it harmless creatures. They're not there to steal. They're not there to cause trouble. They're not there to hate someone. They don't hate the religion. It's just that they much rather sit at home and enjoy late morning with their wife or drinking coffee in bed instead of coming to shul. That's the pleasure of... I am guilty of that sin. I am guilty of all the sins. In other words, the idea of water is soft, low, but it's the source of all pleasures. It brings a person into the idea of just relaxing, take it easy, enjoy life, instead of utilizing the moment and participating in society and contributing in a positive way. The ability, we study it now. For frivolity and scoffing, boasting, and idle talk emanates from the elements of air. Like air, they lack substance. People who can talk and talk and talk, and at the end of the day say, so what, what other than just priding yourself, what else did you say? This is frivolity. They are trying to show off. They would wear the nicest shoes. They would drive the nicest car. They would do... And there is no substance. That's air. It comes from air, emanates from air. And sloth and melancholy emanates from the element of earth. Why? Earth is characterized by heaviness. A man encumbered by sloth and melancholy likewise sense a heaviness of the limbs. Earth from all four elements is the heavier than all. How do I know that it's heavier than water? Anybody knows? How can I prove that that earth is heavier than water?
Earth contains water.
Because if I throw earth underwater, they would sink down, right? It's heavier. It's a simple. I did not take science. We did not study any science in school. So my science equals only CO2. That's all I know. So, earth is defined by heaviness, slowly, relax, just not getting involved. And by doing so, we refrain from connecting to God. So the evil soul can infuse me to stay away, to disconnect from God in 4 ways. One is fire, to get very angry at people, to get very upset and to pride myself, and that itself separates from God. Another person may have the pleasures. He wants to enjoy and indulge himself, and that separates himself from God. A third one is just boasting, just to go to the comedy show and just have a laugh, and again and again and again, just there is no substance. That separates the person from God. I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I'm not pointing out to anybody but myself. I am guilty of everything. You can ask my wife, I'm sure she already. And the last one is earth, just laziness and melancholy. Unfortunately, today, there have never been such a great percentage of society who are depressed and so to say down. And even though we are blessed more than any other generation in the past. That's earth, because we're connected to the ground. If we had so much, if we had to being challenged to earn a living and being challenged to get to where we are to achieve success, maybe that nature wouldn't that behavior would be much more minimized. So back to those 4 elements. You have 4 elements that now the characteristic of negative elements. Fire, air, water, and earth, each one corresponding to a negative trait that causes us to be ripped apart from God. And the animal soul is responsible for those elements. It will try to infuse us with any of those 4 elements to disconnect from God. And by doing so, it will cause us to be separated from God. That's the goal. That's the job of the animal soul. The Rabbi is going to talk about positive traits. We're not going to study it today, but the Rabbi is going to say that even natural behavior comes from the animal soul. In other words, if I do something to boast, if I do something because it makes me feel good, if I do something to be part of society, it's a mitzvah. Don't take me wrong. It's not a sin, but it's not from the godly soul. It's from the animal soul. In other words, the animal soul has many positive traits. Will have many positive traits to assist us and guide us in doing the right thing. However, if the intent is not the right intent, it's not from the godly soul, it's from the animal soul. We'll stop right here. Again, next week I will not be in town, but in 2 weeks we'll continue. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.